Please welcome board member of Women in Product, Yardley Pohl.
Hi, everyone. I hope that you've been inspired and have learned a lot at the conference so far. The conference is not only an opportunity to learn, but also an opportunity to rekindle relationships and make new ones. For many of us, these connections can last a lifetime, especially as we navigate through the ever changing job landscape and work life integration demands. For me, this woman in product community has been essential in lifting me up and helping me forward during this ever changing time. As soon as shelter in place happened in March, I hosted a virtual coffee chat with the woman in product community. And to my surprise, women from all over the world showed up and we discussed everything from job changes to roadmap uncertainties and everything about life. And then for the next 6 months, I hosted a coffee chat once a month with the members of this woman product community. And I must say, every week, our chats was the highlight of my week. Together, we've been able to share stories and advice on how to move forward during this uncertain times. This epidemic has forced many of us to be operating outside of our comfort zone, such as leading teams in a fully distributed work environment and unexpectedly losing jobs. For working parents, the additional strain of work life integrations and virtual schooling forces a whole new way of working and even helping others at work understand our home situations. Bringing our full selves to work has suddenly taken on a whole new meaning. We're going to hear from 3 women product leaders today who've been pushed far by uncertainty to make hard decisions, to be proud of what makes them different, and to lead authentically and with heart. No matter what you're going through, you're not alone. As you're listening to these speakers today, I want you to think about how their stories and advice actually apply to you now to help you embrace your uniqueness, lean into your superpowers, and be a fearless leader. Like I mentioned, there are many people who are losing their jobs during this time, and leaders are not exempt from the situation. It can be a lonely feeling, even though you're not alone. We don't often think about the demands of leadership to make tough decisions in times of crisis or change, even if you're the one who's impacted. Our first speaker today, Laura Marino, faced this particular challenge, and she'll be sharing her experience with us. Laura has led product teams in small organizations and large ones, from SAP Labs to Nuance, Microsoft, Intab, and Lever. Laura is a respected product leader who has excelled at building teams as well as great products. She's now the CPO at True Accord, a fintech company modernizing debt resolution. She's also a guest speaker at Stanford University and a board member of LWT, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing women in leadership. Laura is no stranger to us because she's taken the stage at Women Product Conference before, and we're thrilled to have her back.
It was 3 a.m., another restless night, agonizing over the choices I had to make. And I kept wondering, are there no alternatives? How could things have changed so much so quickly? It had all started only a few weeks earlier when the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic became clear. As the executive team, our first priority had been to ensure the health and safety of our employees. And transitioning to work from home went actually very smoothly. In no time, we had a Slack channel with recommendations for parents on how to deal with their kids at home. And then another one for coffee dates and virtual happy hours. Our next priority had been to focus on our customers. With my team, we quickly reorganized the roadmap, and in record time, we're able to deliver brand new functionality that specifically would help them during this remote work period. But I knew that great execution wasn't going to be enough. As someone who had been through a market downturn before, I knew that more radical changes were going to be needed. For companies in the scale-up stage, they are growing by leveraging VC funding. Preserving cash to extend their runway becomes critical during a downturn. In some cases, that can be achieved through optimizations and reduced hiring or even hiring freezes. But in other cases, business survival requires deep cuts to make the company self-sufficient. And that was the situation we were in. For days, we had been iterating with the executive team over scenarios, looking at every possible cost-cutting measure that would allow us to reduce the size of the layoffs. I had spent the previous 2 years building out a great product and design team and structuring and helping grow a strong engineering organization. And now I had to decide whom to keep and whom to let go. We're product managers. We're good at making difficult trade-offs, right? Let me tell you, when the livelihood of your team members is at stake, it's a lot harder. So here I was in the middle of the night trying to make excruciating decisions. I knew that as a leader, I had to prioritize the people and the investments that would best serve the company moving forward. I also knew that I would do it with the utmost empathy and consideration for those affected. But that didn't make it any easier because business decisions have real human impact. What about my product manager who had just bought a house in San Francisco? Or my designer who was on a working visa? Or my brand new employee who had been so excited to get the new job because she had been unemployed for several months? After many more discussions, the executive team finally came up with a plan that aligned the budget with our new financial reality. It called for deep cuts in people and programs across every department in the company. It was heartbreaking to think of all the talented employees that we were going to have to let go because everyone who had joined the company was special in their own way. But at least I felt that we finally had a plan, that we finally were going to be able to move forward. Well, I was wrong. After their review, the board came back asking for even deeper cuts to prepare for even lower sales. I remember staring at the spreadsheet with our new target budget. The data was there, showing me what I already knew. Given the depth of the cuts, given the focus on optimization and away from growth, my executive role was no longer critical. I had built a strong leadership team under me, and they could deliver on the reduced roadmap and lead the remaining team. I too had to go. Of all the leadership challenges that I have faced in my career, accepting that I was no longer needed has been one of the toughest. The perspective of leaving the team that I had built and walking into the unknown in the midst of the worst labor market that we've seen in recent history was frightening. But I knew it was the right decision for the company. I took some solace in remembering a quote that I had read. It is your job as a leader to develop leaders in your team who can replace you someday. Once I embraced the decision, I was able to go back to do the job that needed to get done. I worked with the executive team until the very end, providing input and preparing for the day in which the layoffs were to be announced. And I have to confess that I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders, because I could now focus on figuring out how to best set up my team for success after my departure. And I didn't have to be the one making the final decisions around the additional cuts. I was able to sleep better again. The day of the RIF was sad for everyone, those leaving and those staying. But the heartfelt notes that I got from people from across the company, the requests to continue to be a mentor, reminded me that while the job ends, relationships remain. I know that my story is not unlike that from many other leaders during this period. In fact, when I first shared my story via a post in LinkedIn, I got many comments from people telling me that they had been through something very similar. But telling the story requires being vulnerable. And vulnerability is not something that is typically valued as a leadership skill. But I do believe that being vulnerable makes you a better leader. When I look back at this experience, there were 3 main lessons that I learned that I want to share. The first one is that business decisions have real human consequences. It doesn't mean that you can avoid making those very difficult decisions, but you should not try to ignore the human impact. The second one is that your role as a leader is to serve the people you lead and to do what's best for your company, even when it's hard, even when it's not great for you. And finally, investing in building relationships with your team, with your colleagues, pays off, because those relationships can last longer than your job. And those will be the people that will be part of your network that will support you in the future. Well, this isn't quite the end of the story. The sadness of leaving the company, the anxiety of being unemployed during an economic crisis hit me pretty hard only a few days after saying goodbye to my team. Things looked bleak and I was feeling really down. But experts say that 2 characteristics of resilient people are, first, that they realize that bad things happen not just to them, but to many others. And second, that they are able to bring perspective into their situation and still see the positive things that they have that they should be grateful for. Now, I don't consider myself a particularly resilient person, but looking at the impact of the pandemic, I knew that I was very fortunate. My family was healthy, and while I was unemployed, unlike many others impacted by the crisis, I could afford to take the time to find my next job. Bringing perspective into my situation not only made me realize that I had many things to be grateful for, it also forced me to question more deeply what I really wanted to do next. And I realized that I wanted to work for a company that was having a positive impact on the lives of those most affected by the crisis. I am now the Chief Product Officer at TrueAccord, a fintech company that has the mission to help millions of people in debt get on a path to financial health. I feel very fortunate to have this job now. But I think that all of us here, even those who are going through a job transition, are fortunate because the tech industry has weathered this crisis better than any other industry. However, this pandemic is deepening the racial, social, and economic inequities that already existed. And I believe that it is our responsibility as leaders in the tech industry, and every product manager is a leader. I believe that it is our responsibility to bring this broader perspective, this awareness of the reality, to help our teams, our organizations, and our industry to focus on what's truly important. I would like to leave you with this thought. When the world turns upside down, what we've always done and how we have always done it no longer apply. The one saving grace is a deep and enduring why, a meaning. I would like to challenge us all to think about that deeper meaning and to find ways in which we can help our industry do what is right, especially now that is so difficult.
Thank you, Laura, for bravely sharing your experience with us. And we're also happy that you found a mission-driven job for the next step of your career. It is true that being a great leader means focusing on your team first, even when you're facing a difficult situation. I too have been in plenty of these situations myself when I had to make hard decisions that would impact the team, including budget cuts and layoffs. It is not easy, but taking the most human-centric approach in communication and delivery is key. Being an empathetic leader and truly understanding what your team is going through is important, especially right now, to connect with each other, to motivate and inspire, and ultimately to retain these awesome team members that you've worked so hard to recruit. Now, next up is Clara Shai, who will be discussing on how to lean into your uniqueness and be an unconventional leader. Clara is truly a pioneer in the industry. She's been named one of the Fortune's most powerful women entrepreneurs, Fast Company's most influential people in technology, and a young global leader by World Economic Forum. Clara is the executive chairwoman and founder of Hearsay Systems, a leading enterprise SaaS insurtech based in San Francisco. She's also a board member, investor, and an advisor to companies like Starbucks and Gusto. Clara was recently featured in Reid Hoffman's Masters of Scale podcast, talking about making your products a painkiller and a vitamin.
Hi, my name is Clara Shai, and I'm the founder and executive chairwoman of Hearsay Systems. I love being a part of the Women in Product community, and I'm so honored that you invited me to be your leadership keynote speaker this year. Over the last 10 years, starting and being CEO of a tech company, I've learned a tremendous number of business and life lessons. Everything from coming up with a product idea, finding product market fit, how to manage cash, but none have been as important as the leadership lessons that I've learned. And that's what I look forward to sharing with you. My first leadership lesson is that in order to think different, it helps to be different. It's something that all of us share. Because for us to have gotten to where we are, for me to have gotten where I am, to be a part of this community, we've all had to think for ourselves. If we just took conventional wisdom and we took other people's expectations for granted and we didn't challenge the status quo, we wouldn't be here. For me, my story starts in Hong Kong in the 80s. This is me in preschool. I went to school and I lived in a community with a lot of people who looked like me. We spoke the same language, we ate the same foods, our parents and our grandparents were from the same place. That all changed at age 4 when my family and me immigrated to the US, first to Akron, Ohio, and later to Chicago, Illinois. You can see here, me in my kindergarten class. Throughout elementary school, I was one of the only Asian Americans in my class, and it really taught me that I was different and that that was okay and something to be embraced. Not easy when you're a kid. Going to Stanford for college and studying computer science, I again found myself different. One of the only women in the undergraduate program, and one of the only fewer women in the master's degree program. At every step of the way, every class, each year as it got harder, I found others questioning whether I belonged. To be honest, I too often questioned whether I belonged. I felt the imposter syndrome almost every day. Sticking with it required me to think for myself and to challenge my own insecurities, to challenge convention, to reject expectations, and not just go with the flow of what everyone thought it ought to be. These experiences as an immigrant and later as a woman in computer science at Stanford, it turns out have become really handy in my life, preparing me for starting a company, writing a book, even joining a public company board of directors. Which brings me to the story of how I came to start a company. It was 2007, and I was working as a PM at Salesforce. I spent every day at work thinking about sales and how to make life easier for salespeople. One morning before work, I checked Facebook, and they had just launched Newsfeed. And so I got all of these push updates about what was happening in my friends' lives. People moving, people changing jobs, people getting married, engaged, having a baby. On my way to work, I remember it hitting me like a ton of bricks that the social graph, that these social networks would forever change personal relationships, as well as business and sales relationships. I ran into the office and I started telling as many people as I could about this. And I got a lot of polite nodding. It drove me crazy. It reminded me of when I was younger and people doubted me. And that muscle memory caused me to build my own app. I decided to do it myself. I created an app in 2007 that connected Facebook with Salesforce CRM. That decision changed my life. It turns out that the app that I built, it was called Faceforce, which is kind of a funny name. It was the first business app built on the social graph. That led to an opportunity to write one of the first books about how to use Facebook and LinkedIn for business. It ended up getting featured in the New York Times, and it inspired me to quit my job and start my own company. A few years ago, it happened again. We were 5 or 6 years into Hearsay, and so many people in enterprise software and across the Fortune 500 had been talking about digital transformation and customer experience in such a narrow lens, only looking at automation and self-service. I saw the power of combining digital plus human. What happens when, instead of replacing the person, you actually empower them with assistance? And that's what inspired Hearsay to pivot for a bigger mission to build human-first digital engagement. Based on that, Hearsay raised more money, made an important acquisition, and created a new category again. First, it was social selling, then human client experience. By the way, we need more PMs, so please message me afterwards. So many of the best things in life, solving a big problem, building and inventing something totally new, starting a company, building a family, building the life that you want, all of this starts from questioning the status quo, from thinking different, thinking for yourself, and challenging others' expectations. The second leadership lesson I learned is that also because we're different, we can relate to more people, and in so doing, play a key role in building more diverse, more equal, and more inclusive environments. We know what it's like to feel marginalized, to feel talked over, dismissed, not seen, not heard. And that's a powerful, visceral experience that stays with you. I believe this makes us better leaders. We've all been there. I used to get mad. These days, I've learned to channel those feelings into making sure I lift up other women and minorities who are in those situations. It means always pulling up that extra chair when a woman or minority enters the room and feels like they don't belong. I see it because I've lived it. I've been that person. I was that person who walked in the room and didn't feel worthy of sitting at the table, even when I had done all of the work. Because of what each of us has been through, we can better recognize other people's bias as well as our own. We can bring people together. We can help shift people from a victim mentality. We can be a role model, a sponsor, and an advocate. This is something that I've tried to think about every day as I've built up the company. Every hire, every interview, every meeting. Starting from when we were just a few people working in this conference room at Sequoia Capital, all the way to now, when we're over 200 people with offices around the world, or I guess people working from home all around the world. It matters. This empathy that we bring, it really matters. It matters for people who are minorities. It matters for the whole team and for the whole culture. The third lesson I'll leave you with is that each of us has a superpower. Because we're different, because we think different, because we know what it's like to be on the receiving end of injustice, I believe each of us is especially equipped to know when we need to lead, to know when there's an occasion to rise to, and then to step up, even if it scares us. At no time has this been more important than now. This year has been crazy. I remember late February reading the earliest reports of COVID starting to spread outside of China and thinking to myself, why aren't any more businesses closing? What's going on? And then realizing that it was my job to lead. It was my job to decide that business was not as usual and to stop the flights and to close our offices. In late May, it happened again. It's easy to look back now at what happened to Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and condemn those unconscionable acts. But in late May, I remember with my friends talking about how terrible it was and participating in protests. But in business, no one's saying anything. I kept wondering, why isn't anyone doing anything? Why? And then again, it dawned on me. It's on me. I had to do something. It's in these moments that I've learned firsthand that leadership doesn't depend on your title, and it's not something that you can pick up from reading a book. Leadership are these times when there are no playbooks. There is no guide. There is no one telling you what to do, only your inner voice. And that inner voice, I've realized, is our superpower. Listen to it, harness it, give yourself time and space, and be brave. The world needs you now more than ever. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to speak to our community and to be a part of it, even if we can't be together this year. Hearsay has a bunch of PM openings, so please reach out to me for that or for any other reason.
Thank you, Clara. Wow, we have a lot in common. I'm also from Hong Kong and started engineering. Leaning into our differentiation to create a diverse and inclusive environment is key. And speaking about superpowers, what is yours? Mine is the ability to naturally connect with people and to operate in a very wide operating range. If you don't know your superpower yet, I would encourage you to find it by looking at patterns of when people reach out to you for help. What is it that makes them think of you? And when people's energy shoot up when you do what you do, what makes them think what you're doing is magical? Keep looking for these moments and trends, and you will then find your superpower that differentiates from others, and that makes you who you are. Okay, next up is Kasha Stewart, who will be sharing with us her journey in product management and key lessons that she learned along the way, and how she was able to defy her naysayers. Kasha is the head of product for Movies Anywhere, a Disney-owned video-on-demand movie library service. Kasha's path to product was anything but straightforward. With degrees in photography and film production, she found her passion somewhat inadvertently. But once she discovered it, she was able to pursue product roles with focus and commitment. Kasha developed resiliency early in her career and has found new insights in the face of challenge.
Hello, women of product. My name is Kasha Stewart, and I'm head of product for Movies Anywhere. I hope that you've been inspired by all the phenomenal speakers we've heard from today. I'm honored to be the closing keynote and share with you my product journey and leadership techniques for leading in uncertain times. I can't tell you how excited I am today to share my story. A little less than a decade ago, when I started my career, a coworker asked me if I was sure that I wanted to be in product because I didn't look like a product manager. Well, I hope they are watching today. But in the craziness of 2020, it's made me think, what's changed in my leadership style in the last 6 months? The work has become my comfort and my constant. As I was assessing over the details like any good product manager, it kind of hit me that in this time period, in the craziness, I've been my most authentic self at work, which is a rarity. I pride myself on letting the work speak for me, and I'm all about the tech. But as I started to think and reflect about my life, especially earlier in my career, I found myself making myself small so that other people would feel comfortable. As a Black woman in tech and society, I was taught early on to fix myself for society, fix myself for my career, fix myself for my family. But what was I exactly fixing and why? I'm proud to say I no longer subscribe to that way of thinking. And I want you to know there's no prize in making yourself small. My only regret is that I wish I had learned it sooner. Today, I want to share with you my lessons learned in leading during a crisis and change. How do I show up? I don't steer far from the fundamentals that got me here today. I lead with empathy, integrity, and confidence in my decision making. I often get asked, how did I get to where I am today? How did I get into leadership? What's the secret sauce? Or what's the blueprint? Now, I know all my type A personalities that are taking notes out there are asking for a step-by-step guide. But in all honesty, the road to leadership in my personal experience wasn't that glamorous. It wasn't a straight A to B endpoint. And it was probably a little less predictable than an MVP launch. Yes, I've had some great successes, but I've also had some misses. My leadership journey began when I raised my hand when I was working for a startup and noticed that a mobile team was struggling. And I was pretty comfortable. I had a director's title at that point. I had projects in the queue. I didn't have any direct reports, but things, I would say, were going smoothly. I'm not 100% sure what made me volunteer to step in and help lead this team that, due to resource limits, was being led by an associate product manager and some very assertive devs, to put it nicely. I had never launched a mobile app before, and certainly not Android. I didn't even know if I knew what I was talking about. But I saw a problem. And in that problem, I saw an opportunity to add value, to add my strength, and to help keep things moving. It was taking that risk. That to me is leadership, trusting your instincts, knowing that there can be a better way. And especially when you don't even know the outcome. My next topic is one of my favorite ones: be present. As many of us are remote right now, and it's hard to kind of keep those interpersonal relationships and energy just going. One of the things that's helped me that I've started was a 15-minute coffee talk with my team every morning. And whether your organization is on camera or off camera, I feel like this has helped people bond in the morning. We talk about the pandemic, we talk about the social injustice movement, we talk about shop, we talk about the most recent postings on TechCrunch, and sometimes we talk about if Ralph's has a sale on flour. And early in the pandemic, flour was a hot item. But one of these things is bringing up an opportunity for people to bond, to not just have to be worried about the status updates, where we are in the release cycle, but really just, hey, I want to get to know you, I care. My next lesson is be transparent. The funny thing is that people always reference tech as this monolithic entity, but it was built by people. And for me, when I think about tech, there's nothing wrong with adding some humanity back into the process. As we are all remote, empower your team to be drivers, even if it's from your PMs to your senior PMs. Give them that confidence that they can make decisions and that they can continue on the product vision even when you're not in the room. Pass the presentations. One of the things that I've done with my team that has been successful recently is breaking my team up into theme-based strategic roadmaps. Usually I have my overarching roadmap, and it's been great, it's been successful. But as my team starts to make the evolution from feature-based to actually building out an ecosystem, it was one of those things that I heard in a conference that gave me the aha moment. How can I make my team feel like they have ownership of their individual pods or their individual platforms? By allowing my team to have that sense of ownership, they become self-governing. They start to see the strategy, and then I start to teach that. As a leader, for my team, their success is my success. Their failures are my failures. Be a change catalyst. Early in the pandemic, I wanted to keep things as usual. I almost wanted to not even acknowledge that we were in a pandemic. It was just one of our work from home Fridays. And I realized that was driven out of my own personal fears. because I didn't, for a long time, know what was going to happen. I didn't know if we were going to go back into the office. I didn't know if things were going to get worse. And it allowed me to have an opportunity to be vulnerable and to ask the team, what did they really want? In a time of crisis, I know it's crazy to be like, well, what would you change? But it's kind of the perfect opportunity to change. Be fearless. I don't know about you, but does anyone else have FOMO during this time? I was really hesitant about giving feedback during a crisis. You know, we definitely had some hiccups in the beginning, and I felt like, well, we're in a pandemic, it's not the appropriate time, let's just keep working, that person will get better. And as we know, that people do not get better unless they are challenged, unless they are presented with the feedback, unless you give them the skills and the opportunity. In the beginning of the pandemic, I was super hesitant to even say anything that was going awry. You know, I just wanted to keep people moving, keep the projects moving. But then I realized that's really doing a disservice. When we come out of this, I don't want my team to veer so far off the path that we all have now bad habits because we just wanted to get work done. So take the time, continue to give feedback, continue to challenge your team, and even challenge yourself. As a leader, you set the standard, so be intentional with your feedback. Give your managers the opportunity to figure things out. Allow them to have that creativity, that feedback, but also course correct when you see that something's not going the way that it should. Be resilient. I have found in my career, whether you work for a startup or enterprise, there's always politics and there's always pushback. I would say in these confrontational moments or times when you can't seem to move forward with cross-functional teams, think about the long game. What does this mean for your team? What does this mean for the roadmap? Will you even care 5 months from now? Sometimes in our roles, we have to be diplomats and we have to compromise. I'm not saying compromise to the point that you don't recognize the features, but sometimes it's a give and take. And that's helped me be successful. I know there's been heated moments. I know it's harder when we're remote. We lose that face-to-face time. But again, think of your long game. I used to get wrapped up in wanting everything to be originating from product because that's what product does. We're the ones that figure this out. We know the why. But as I've grown in my career, I know that this is really to be a truly collaborative organization. Ideas can come from everywhere. Some of my favorite leadership takeaways are: make sure you get rest. I know that's easier said than done, but as a leader, I know that I lead better when I've allowed myself to take a break and to get rest. Remember, it's okay to say no. In fact, it's necessary at times. Be flexible to change. The roadmap is ever evolving. As much as I love road mapping, I know it's my best intentions, it's my estimates, it's my release plans, but I also know that my team is interdependent throughout the organization. Allow some flexibility. Allow time for those dependencies. Again, be flexible to change. One of my favorites is you won't please everyone and you shouldn't. Many of us get into traps of wanting to please other cross-platform teams, to make everything okay, but that doesn't always work in our advantage. And it can hinder your team's growth and trajectory. On a personal note, find your squad. It will help you keep your sanity in times like this. Never stop learning. Go to the conferences, just like Women in Product. Ask questions, show up, take classes. I still, almost 10 years in the game, take classes on a regular basis. Be consistent. If you're going to start something, finish it, but be consistent. Fill in the gaps along the way. I'm constantly asking myself, what can be better? What am I missing? What are we not thinking of? Mistakes are part of the journey, and always progress is better over perfection. Seek out the problems if you really want to be a leader. There's always an opportunity in the problems that you see. You can even start small with one-on-ones with your leads. Where are the biggest challenges that we are facing? If you had a wish, what would you change about our organization? What would you change about our product? And lastly, help someone get their career started, whether they look like you or not. In closing, I want to acknowledge that many of us are making hard and difficult decisions in our day-to-day. And to be honest, some days I don't know if I'm winning or if I'm losing. But like any great PM, I'm going to continue to iterate on my product leadership style. I'm going to take feedback from my team, but for now, I'm going to celebrate the wins. I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share my story with all of you. Be brave, women in product. We are mighty in numbers. I am validated by all of you here today. Thank you, and remember to keep things moving.
Thank you, Kasha. I agree. Never make yourself small. Have the confidence and believe in yourself so that others know what you're capable of and support you in your career. In a 2009 McKinsey study with 329 companies and 13 million people, only 22% of C-level executives are women, compared to 48% of entry-level jobs who are women. Men are expected to be assertive, while women are expected to be more collaborative and a team player. So when a woman advocates for herself, people often see herself unfavorably. So over the years, I've really learned to build up my confidence, find my allies, and make sure that my performance reviews are as objective as possible, leaving very little room for subjective evaluations. I've also learned to really go for those promotions and jobs that I don't typically qualify for because I want to be evaluated for them and not sell myself short. I'd like to thank all of our speakers this week for sharing their stories and their insights. It's really an honor and privilege to have them here today. As we wrap up, I want you to know that Women in Product community is here for you. No matter what you're going through in life, whether it's facing a challenging job or finding your next one, or even work-life integrations being hard for you, we are here for you all year round, not just today at the annual conference. As you leave the conference today, please commit to one micro step. Take one small action that you've learned or insight that you've gained. Once you take that micro step, the next one will be much easier. And know that we are here all year round with programs and events all around the world. So I would love to hear from you in the post-event survey so that we can continually make our programs better and make this a better organization for you. And finally, I would love to thank our sponsors. Without them, this wouldn't have been possible. Now I'm going to hand things off to Elizabeth, who's going to wrap things up for us.